Hello, hello, guys. How is it going? It is Friday. It has been a week. I am so sorry I missed our live last night. I had it on my Google Calendar that sends me a little alerts that it was tonight. And I think I did that because last month we were on a Friday. It just happened to be a Friday. And so I don't know, I must have just... I don't know. I had it on Thursday in my announcements, but then Friday, I was thinking Friday the 13th, I was just off this month. So I apologize for missing you if you were on live and were waiting for me. Feel free to shoot me a message. Say, hey, where are you? Because I had my calendar wrong. So how is everyone doing? How's your summer going? It's July already. It's crazy. Okay, let's get into it. So our July Joy Box is the BU art. And you've probably heard me say it, but I love making crafts that allow us to customize it to words of affirmation that we need to hear, things that we need to see on a day-to-day basis, and things like that. And so I love doing stuff like that. Hence, this is probably our third project where we've done something similar to this. So, anyways, this is the project we're doing. We've got this cute little bee, the BU, and then the little clip here with a piece of paper that you get to customize with words that you want to see there. The flower is kind of incorporated with the frame. And then the back, I'm pretty excited about this new little flap to stand our art up with. I'm going to put these in the shop as like an accessory, so you could buy these. I have to, before I do that, I have to test some different sizes. This one's perfect for medium size, but I want to have 3 different sizes for the different sizes of kits that we put out. But anyways, I think this is just such a neat idea to be able to turn any art or kits that you have from us into standing art pieces. So that is our project. Let me get my glue gun plugged in real quick. Okay, I don't want to forget that. So, if you've opened your box and inspected any items, if you're missing anything, if anything is broken or damaged, please let me know right away. Send me an email and I will get you a replacement out to you at no cost to you. Hopefully, you've all inspected your box before you start crafting. That way you don't get halfway through the project and you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have that piece. And then you have to put yourself on hold and then come back to that. That stinks. I don't want that to happen to you. So inspect your items prior to crafting. We will have this video available in the group as a replay, so you can watch this at any time that's convenient to you. I will also put it on our website for those who like to stay off of Facebook when you're crafting, and all of the notifications that pop up, that will be on our website within about 48 hours of today's live. And then, as always, post a picture of your project. Let's inspire one another. Let's be courageous in our art and post a picture in the group. It's our safe spot. You are in a safe environment, so don't feel like your project's anything less than anybody else's. And show us what you've been up to. Okay. This month's box includes, let me just open it here. You have your base. And this is one of the projects where I left the score marks off. This one I thought, you know, if you didn't want to put the clip on here, you could then rearrange things and maybe just put the BU on here and maybe put the B up here and kind of just do your own thing. So I left it blank on purpose, just to give you that artistic freedom to make it your own. So we've got our base. Like I said, the flower's incorporated with the frame here. So we've got the flower frame. And then this little piece is a set piece for ease of painting. So that will slide right in there. We've got the BU letters. Your clip. We do have a piece of cardstock, which is a different size than what I have here. I decided to give you more paper than you would need. So again, you could make it longer, you could make it bigger, you could write a phrase in there, whatever you want to do there, but having that flexibility for a little bit more writing space, I thought I'd give you more there. So you'll notice that it is bigger than what we've got there. You've got your little bee, and then the wings will sit right on top of that. And then you've got the 3 little pieces for the yellow stripes on your bee. There's that. And then the frame pieces for the back. So you're going to have a rectangle with 2 rectangles inside cut out. You're going to have 2 of these little rounded brackets, and then the large stand piece. Okay, so that is what's coming in your kit this month. What you're going to need is, for paint colors, I'm using Anita's Morning Blue for the background. I've got just a apple barrel white. It's in a, I buy the big bottles of it, so I use these small bottles to put it in when I'm low. And then black. King's Gold. This is an Anita's black, but any black will work, whether that's apple barrel, any brand of black will work. And then I'm using apple barrel burnt umber and apple barrel King's Gold. And that is it for the colors that I'm using today. You'll need a couple makeup wedges, so I'm going to pull those out now. You're going to need a large flat brush or a sponge brush. So something like this. We just want something with a wide, flat surface for painting the background quickly. It's frustrating to try and paint the background with something, let's say, like this, or even like this. It would take too long and get frustrating, and I know I would give up. So something with just a good surface area for painting the background. You're going to need a medium round brush and a liner brush. So a medium round is something like this. You'll notice that in my list of supplies, I don't give you a number. And the reason why is because all brush manufacturers use different numbers. So this brand is from, this is a Fine Touch from Hobby Lobby, and it's kind of worn off already, but I believe this is probably a 4 or a 6. And then we have, this is from, I think, Walmart. This is a 12. All different brands are going to use different numbers. So it's really just eyeballing it. This could be a medium round. I would consider this more of a large round. So you can kind of see the difference there. But any of these will work. And then you'll just need something that is a little smaller, like a, probably a 2 or a 1 of something like that. So a small round or a liner brush is also what they're called. A liner brush is simply a small round, a tiny round. You could go that small. You could even go a little smaller than that if you had something smaller. Let's see, do I even have something smaller? I need to go through my brushes. It's been a while, so even something like that would be considered a liner brush. Can you see that even? Let me bring that up. Let's try this. So these two I would consider liner brushes. A 1, a 2, even a 0. Although I'm not a big fan of zeros because I feel like they're really tiny. And then any size of these, medium to large round, is what you're going to need. Okay. Glue and a glue gun. So I'm going to use, I usually use an instant adhesive, but all my bottles are clogged right now, and I have not had a chance to unclog them. So I'm going to use this wood glue that I got at the Dollar Tree. And it is a clear drying wood glue. I've tested it. And it works fairly well. Where does it say clear drying? I know it does. Somewhere it says. Dries fast. Here it is. Dries fast and clear. So that's one of the things for those of you who are new. You want to use a glue that's clear drying. You can use pretty much anything. It does not have to be a wood glue. Let's see, and then we need a glue gun, and the glue gun is going to be used to attach our clip. So if you're not attaching the clip, you don't need the glue gun. But you want something, that glue gun really gives us that really thick glue that's going to help us attach that. So that's what the glue gun is for. Scissors, masking tape, baby wipes, sanding paper or sanding block. You're going to need a water rinse cup, rags, paper towels, and possibly a blow dryer if you want to speed the process along. And then for those of you who are new, this QR code is, if you scan that with your camera, it will bring you right directly to the group. So this is kind of a nice little reminder. You know, I don't know about you, but I'm a part of a million different groups, and sometimes trying to find the group that I need to get to is a pain. And searching in Facebook can be a nightmare sometimes. So we put this QR code, so if you want to catch it live or watch it on the replay, this will take you to the group directly. So a quick little access to that. And that's it. Let me see here, make sure I can see comments. No comments yet. Okay. I know I'm not at the time I said I was going to be, so if you're catching this on the replay, again, I apologize for that. Alright, so I'm going to throw my paints up here, get them out of the way, and I am going to start taping down my pieces. So I use masking tape to hold my little pieces, and I try and keep the pieces, let's make sure I've got the right side here. I try and tape pieces that are going to be similar colors together. So the center of my flower is going to be yellow, my little stripes are yellow, so I've got those together. When you're using tape, you can really use anything that is a low tack tape, washi tape, even like a Scotch tape, anything with a super strong adhesive like a Gorilla Tape or Gorilla or duct tape or something like that, and even some of the shipping tape might tear your wood pieces, tear the back of the wood off, so be mindful of that. And I'll just slide those out of the way. This little bee doesn't need tape, and then I'll put my BU together. So I posted a sneak peek of the next month's crafts, and you guys, we're going 3D. Now, I know I typically say our signs are all 3D, having that dimension with these pieces, but we're truly, truly going 3D with next month's craft. I'm super excited about it. I will try and remember to show a little sneak peek of that next, after we're done here. Let me get a new paper here. Oh, you're going to need a paint palette. Did I say that? I feel like I keep forgetting to add that to my list. Or did I add it? Paint? I did not. Well, you'll want a paint palette. Let me make a note of that real quick. And by paint palette, I do not mean that you have to go out and buy an artist paint palette. This is what I have. I just have this, I don't know, this is just a plastic cardboard that some stickers came in. And the reason I use plastic is because I use these wax paper, they're like from the bakery. I bought a box of wax paper sheets. Well, the paint kind of can go through it, and so I just use this to put my wax paper on to protect my table. But you could use parchment paper. You could use oh my goodness, I just had a brain fart. Parchment paper, a paper plate would work, a paper bowl would work, aluminum foil. A lot of crafters online like to use aluminum foil. You could use that because you can just literally let it dry, fold it up, and use the other side of it. So there's that. Before I continue on, though, I do want to explain what I'm doing here for anyone who's new that might be watching. I like to reuse my makeup wedges a lot. Like, I get a lot of uses out of those. So this was a project I did, and I literally just let them sit and dry. And then I rip them off and then cut these crispy bits off. I don't wash them. I just let it harden and dry, and then I cut those bits off. This goes in the garbage, and now I have another use for these instead of a one-time use. I get lots of uses out of those. So makeup wedges, I think I've used one pack from Walmart for a whole year, if not more. So they can go a long ways for you. Okay. I think we've got everything ready. Let's get started. I like to start with my background first, and I am going to paint that blue. And I tried to create a sky type background. So I'm actually going to use my blue and some white. So I'm going to create some wispy clouds in the background, and you could do more fluffy clouds if you want. Maybe I'll do that as well, just to show you how to do that. So I've got my brush here, and I got it wet. I added just a little bit of water to it, but I don't want it dripping wet. And that will just help my bristles and help my paint flow a little better. Help my bristles soften up a little bit. And I'm going to start by just adding just blue and not worry about my clouds. This first coat is going to be a super light coat. You want to just have just the smallest amount of paint on your brush and just go in with a very light coat. This is our primer coat. It's our base coat. It's going to look splotchy, and that's okay, because the next coat we're going to put in the more blue and our clouds, and it's going to look great. The reason we do light coats is it dries fast, and it will produce a more smooth finish as opposed to trying to layer it on in a thick coat. That's going to give you a really uneven finish. It's not going to be smooth. You're going to have, you know, clumps of paint that you just can't smooth out like you can a light coat. And it takes a heck of a lot longer to dry. So we're going to start with that, and we'll put that aside. Okay, and we're going to come in with our frame. Now I stained my frame. I did the faux stain method using the burnt umber, so I'm going to get a little bit of that on my palette or my plate here, and I'm going to use a baby white for this. If you don't have baby whites, you can use a old rag or a kind of a more high quality paper towel. I'm being somewhat mindful of trying to keep the brown out of the flower area, but the flower is going to get painted anyways, so it's okay if you go into that flower a little bit. And I'm just rubbing that paint on. It's creating that really pretty faux stained. Anyways, you can use a quality paper towel that's damp as well. And the reason why I say quality is because the wood will tear up your paper towel. And so you want something that's going to withstand that. And you could probably layer your paper towel if you didn't have a good one. You'll just have to try it out with what you have and see what works best. You know, if you're starting to see that your paper towel is shredding and you know, catching your wood, and you know, you have little shreds of paper towel everywhere, you probably want to use something different. Okay, I just used my fingernail to kind of get back into that little crevice right there where those two petals meet. But again, don't worry about getting onto your petal, because we're going to come over with white paint after it dries. And there we go. Okay, we'll put that aside for a minute. I want to let this area dry before I come in with the white, so we'll let that sit. Then I'm going to paint my black bits, which is my B and my BU. I'm going to use one of my makeup wedges here, and I'm going to tap and just kind of tap around on my palette. So I tapped it right into the paint, and then I'm tapping off to the side. So I loaded it and then I offloaded it. What you want is to see no globs of paint on that end. Tapping it a couple different times on your palette also helps get that makeup wedge to soak up some of that paint. But you want to see a smooth surface there with no globs of paint. And especially when you're painting the smaller pieces like the BU, you don't want to have too much paint on your makeup wedge, because what we're doing is we're just tapping the top of our pieces. We're not painting the edges. And with just a small amount of paint on our makeup wedge, that keeps the paint from collecting in those small crevices, like inside those E's and inside the O. I'm going to get a little more paint. There we go. So we're just using a medium pressure and tap, tap, tapping. Again, a light coat. We're going to go back with a second coat, so don't worry about it looking splotchy. Black does cover better than most colors, but we'll probably still go back over with a second coat. And that's my, that leads me into another tip here. If you don't need to have a second coat, maybe your black covers really well, or your wood just soaked it up just perfectly. You don't need to put a second coat just because I do, or vice versa. Maybe I decided, you know, this looks great for me, I don't need a second coat, and you do. Just pause the video, put a second coat on, or fast forward the video if I'm doing a second coat and move on to the next step. It's all going to be based, and it's personal, based on the type of paint you have. Everyone applies paint different. Everyone holds brushes different and has different brush strokes. So things are going to just be different per person, and you're just going to have to look at your piece and decide if it needs a second coat or not. But don't feel like you need to follow my steps exactly. This is really just a guide, not the absolute way that you should be doing it. So when you're tapping it, let's see if I can hold it to the side. I'm just literally tap, tap, tapping it. You don't want to tap it so hard that your makeup wedge falls and gets pressed onto those edges. We want to stay right on the top of that surface and not paint the edges. So yeah, I'll need a second coat on that one, but there we go. All right, so let's do our yellow next. So I was thinking about doing a, oh goodness, a series of videos that were more of the common techniques that we use. So something like using the makeup wedge, you know, it'd be a quick, maybe 1 minute video, and then using different brushes, gluing techniques, masking techniques, things like that, that if we had those, you know, you could go back and possibly review those techniques if you needed to. New members could watch those. But then I think my thought process would be is those would then, those technique videos could eliminate the length of our current tutorials. You know, so I'm not reiterating and talking about the same techniques over and over. We could just, you know, get into those craftings. It could make maybe the videos a little faster, because I know everyone's short on time, and really just focus in on those new techniques or just the new craft itself. You know, putting it together and things like that. So I'll be throwing out some polls here as well for that, and see what you guys think of that. The other thing that we've been kind of thinking about is painting. I love painting, and I actually, some of you might know this, but we used to have a painting membership, and I just really miss it. And so I thought, what if we just had some bonus craft nights, whether that's a painting night or just using some household things where we have kind of a bonus craft night. Craft challenges. I love the idea of a craft challenge. And I'm kind of waiting until we hit a members mark for that, just to get a little more people involved in a craft challenge. But that's something that we've been kind of thinking about as well. So the painting part of it, and I'm kind of leaning towards, just kind of talking out loud here, but using the theme as, you know, painting something in regards to the theme of the craft. Or we could have a free printable that you could then, you know, print out and attach to, let's say, a book, or you know, something thrifted, or add to a frame. Okay, so I just have this little piece of my brush that's sticking out. It's not wanting to cooperate. So if you're finding that your brush is kind of, you know, are splayed out and the bristles are a little bit wonky, it's okay to give your brush a haircut every once in a while. So this is where I'm using that medium round brush. And when I am painting it, I'm starting from inside the piece, or this petal, and I'm painting out and just pulling my brush out. I did add a little water to my bristles just to help, again, that paint flow. But I'm just carefully painting around that frame along that score mark. And if you are more comfortable with using a smaller brush, like the liner brush, for this area here around the frame, feel free to grab that. I'm just using a light hand and lightly just dragging that paint across. But I don't want to paint the edges of this either, so again, that's where putting your brush inside the piece, inside the petal, and pulling out to the edge keeps those edges clean. If you, let's say, and I'll show you an example here, since we're not going to see this edge, let's say I start here and I pull this way. See, I just keep coming to that edge and pulling. What's going to happen is you're going to get that deposit of paint right there, because you're pulling, you're starting your bristles here and pressing down. It's going to deposit that paint right there. So if you're trying to keep your edges clean, you do want to start in the middle and pull to that edge, and that will help get those, keep those edges nice and clean. So for the flower, feel free to use a combination of tools. You could even use your makeup wedge until you get to this smaller area, and you could then switch to a brush. It's okay to just use the tools that you're comfortable using. I've been painting for quite a few years, so I'm very comfortable using kind of a larger brush. And that just takes practice. To get that detail right down to that line. Okay. There we go. Alright, so this is pretty splotchy. I'm going to let that sit and dry, and then I'll put a second coat on that. So now that we've got, let's see, I forgot my little guys here. So what I'm going to do for my wings, I'm going to use just a makeup wedge for that with the white, and I'm going to paint those guys white. You could use silver if you wanted to here. You could mix your black and white together and do a light gray or a dark gray wing, whatever you want to do there. Again, remember, this is just a guide. Use the colors that you want. Kind of explore different things, mix colors, see what happens. I know when I'm crafting, when I get into that creative zone, my mind always starts to ask questions. And by that I mean what if questions, like what if I painted this silver, or what about using a pink flower, or what about using a green, what about if we did a green flower, you know, things like that. As you're working, you'll start to notice when you listen, or, you know, listen to your mind and clear your mind, it will start to offer suggestions for your crafts. Okay, everything has its first coat on it. And so let's go back, add our second coat, and start adding some detail. Before we go on, though, I want to talk about the smoothness of your wood. I added a little water to my blue paint to help it flow over this because wood is super porous. But having water and even just the paint itself can cause your wood to feel rough. And what happened is the wood has little baby fibers that are all glued together to create your surface, and once you get it wet, those little fibers stand up. And that's totally normal. You did nothing wrong. That's just the way the nature of wood is. So once it's dry, and if you feel it and you're like, wow, this is super rough, all you need to do is take a fine grit sandpaper. 220 is good. You could even go 400. Anything above 220 is great. And lightly sand down those fibers. So I'm going to take my sanding block and I'm just going to lightly sand it. You don't have to sand it so hard, though, that you're removing paint. You don't want to, you know, have to redo everything you worked for. Okay. There we go. And you'll get some of the dust that comes off that does have paint on it, but you shouldn't sand it so hard. Like, let's say I sand it super hard in this corner because I know it will be covered by the frame, but you don't want to sand it so hard that you're actually removing paint and revealing that wood underneath. Alright, so that's sanded down. Let's add our second coat. So I'm going to go back to my bigger brush, my big flat, and I'm going to grab some of that blue again and put that second coat on. And because we already have a first coat on, you do not need to add a ton of water to your paint. I do always add just a little bit of water because while my paint is sitting here, it does get a little tacky. Acrylic paints dry super fast, and so I'll notice that, you know, it's kind of still sticking, or it's not, I'm not able to push it around as easy. So I'll add a little tiniest bit of water to it. So keep that in mind. As your paint is sitting on your palette, it is drying and it will become tacky. So I'm just kind of concentrating on the inside of this board. This outside edge is going to be covered up by my frame. Getting a nice smooth finish with those nice light coats. And there we go. Okay, so to add some clouds, we can just do some really soft, and forgive me, I don't know cloud names, but the long, just kind of soft clouds. They're not fluffy. I'm just going to grab some white. I don't have enough on my palette here. Let me get a little more. I haven't washed my brush. I'm going to just put a little bit of white on there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just feather it back and forth. It's going to blend in with the blue that's wet and already there. It's going to give us that soft white, kind of a gradient cloud. So you can kind of see those happening there. So you can add as many of those as you want. Or you can leave it all the way blue. Okay? And if it gets to be a little too dark, just add a little blue to your brush and soften those out. Okay? All right, so I wanted to show you how to do fluffy clouds if you wanted to. So I'm going to use my brown for this, and I'm going to load it up with blue, and then I'm going to grab some of that white. So I've got both colors on here. When I do fluffy clouds, I kind of just tap my brush and I let the round bristles kind of do the work for me. So I'm just going to tap and bring it out and up and tap, tap, tap. I'm going to get a little more white on my bristles here. And I try and keep it random. So if you want to give this a try, so I kind of have a bigger area and then they kind of peter out and they get a little smaller there. So we're kind of just building up that, and I'm just literally tap, tap, tapping with my bristle. I'm not brushing, I'm not doing any sort of brush stroke, it's just a tap. I have both colors on my brush, more, I would say, white than blue, but it's just giving it that soft hint of some fluffy clouds happening. Do a little bit there, and maybe some right here. Now most clouds do have kind of a flatter bottom, so I just kind of keep that flat there, but I'm not brushing it. I'm just kind of keeping my brush from falling too far below that. Okay. Now that I've got this almost a light blue clouds happening, I want to add some highlights to them, some areas that are a little bit brighter. So I'm going to grab just more white, and I'm going to tap that white in more along the top of those clouds. So you can see down here I've got that mix of the blue and white, and then I just came in and added just that white that's on my brush to get the top of those fluffy clouds. There we go. I'm not going to do any up here, although that would probably make sense because I know my little bee is going to sit right there. But that is how you can do fluffy clouds, or you can just do the streaky clouds. I'm not sure what they're called. I know that there's a stratus cloud, cumulus, but I have no idea which is which. Okay, so we're going to put this aside and let it dry. And we're going to come to our flower. Okay. Just coming in with my second coat here on my petals. I don't have to do anything with the frame. I like how dark it is. If you wanted to have more of a darker stained frame, you could come in with the second coat at this time. Okay. Second coat always seems to go by a little bit faster. All right, I've got my second coat in. But while my paint is wet, I want to add some shadows to my petals. I really want to make them pop and look more 3D. And so I'm going to create some shadows on the bottom side of these petals. And to do that, I'm actually going to use blue. I like using a blue color, like a really light blue color for shadows on white. You could use gray, but I feel like gray is super flat looking and not warm at all, whereas blue, you know, you're kind of reflecting off the sky anyways, that white does, and so I feel like that's a more true shadow color. So I'm going to leave the white on my brush. I'm not going to wash it, and we're going to just grab a little bit of blue. Okay, and I'm going to just create these soft little streaks of blue. It's going to blend in with the white that I have right there, so it's super soft. If it gets to be too dark, go grab some white and just go right back over it with white, and that will soften it up. I'm just going to add that blue to the bottom of my petals, and I kind of curve it around the petal right there. I start at the base here, and I curve it around. The tiniest little bit here. We're going to kind of see that's all in the shadow, this one here, so I just did blue on that one. And then here. And then because I'm portraying my sun up in this corner here, flowing down, these top two petals, I am using the tiniest bit of blue. We're really not seeing a shadow on those because they are kind of in that direct sunlight. So we don't need much there. And I'm kind of going on both sides there. It's really these two here and a little bit of that one that is got most of that shadow happening. Very subtle, but really makes a difference on making them just look a little more 3D. Pretty amazing what you can do with paint and making things look like an actual object. I just think it's amazing. I'm just kind of playing around with the white and the blue and creating some shadows around those edges. There we go. Okay. Let's go get our second coat on everything else. We'll put that aside. We'll do our yellow next. Let's sand it real quick. Remember, if it feels a little rough, use a little sanding on it. Smooth it out. There we go. We'll come over to our black. This is one of those projects that I did not distress. I just got to thinking about that, seeing the edges of the BU. I'm like, oh, I did not even distress this project, which is very rare. I usually distress, have to add some distressing to it. It's engraved in me for some reason. My mom is painting, redoing some of her side tables, like couch side tables. And she's like, I'm just gonna do a soft white, like a creamy white, and just keep it neutral. And I'm like, okay. She loves distressing. And I said, okay. She's like, I'm not going to distress it. I just want a nice, clean, soft white. Well, she's lived with it for a day. And she comes over and she's like, yeah, can I borrow some stain? I need to distress those tables. They're too clean. It's hilarious. I was counting the days in my head, how long she could wait to do that. Okay. So that's where I get it from. Must be. Must be. Look at those fluffy clouds. Those look so good. Okay. I'm going to hit it with a blow dryer because it's still a little bit wet and I want my glue to stick. When you're ready to glue, it is important that your project be completely dry. If your paint is wet or damp or, even feels cool to the touch, which means it's still wet and not cured, your glue will not stick and your pieces might pop off or they might fall off. So make sure that everything is completely dry before you start gluing, which is kind of nice to have a blow dryer here. So I'm going to just blast at least my edges here and get those dry. There we go. Perfect, perfect. Okay. I'm going to glue this up. I am using this today. I'm trying to see if my glue's going to... I usually use this stick fast, but it is just slow moving. I feel like it's almost dry in the bottle itself. I don't know. This works great too, though. Glue goes a long way. Don't get heavy with the glue. It's better to be a little light than heavy. Otherwise, you're going to have glue squirting out the edges. You can even get a silicone brush or something. I actually just saw, do I have one? No. Somebody post about this silicone brush set, which is in my Amazon wish list. But it helps to smooth out all your pieces. So if you get a little bit heavy with the glue, do take a minute to smooth it out so it's not going to squirt out onto your project and cause a glue mess. Okay, so this is just going to sit right on top here. We're just going to line up our edges. And I'm going to use some clamps to help hold me down. And I got a little bit of a mess happening. I've got some blue that kind of got deposited on my edge here, so I'll show you how to clean that up if that happens to you when we get it all done. If you don't have actual crafters clamps from the dollar store, these work great too. I love using just these metal like bag chips, bag clips, bag chips. Chip bag clips. Maybe that's what I was trying to say. There we go. Okay. Before you glue your pieces onto your bead, just make sure that they are gonna fit in those score marks, and I'm glad I did because I painted the wrong side. It actually should be this side for it to fit where I need it to. It's okay. So I'm just going to take that, grab my makeup wedge, and paint that piece real quick. We'll let that dry. We'll test this one here. Always do a pre-run or a dry run on where you want your piece. So when I say a little glue goes a long way, you can see I put too much glue on that, and when I go to press it down, it's squirting out the bottom there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift it up and wipe away that glue, and then I'll put it down. The other thing that happens when you put too much glue on something is it tends to float around. Even though you put it somewhere, it might start to shift one way or the other. I don't know if you've noticed that, but that's happened to me as well. A little glue squirting out the edge is okay, especially if you're using a clear drying glue, but you don't want too much. So before it dries, I try and pick it up and wipe away any excess. And glue that top piece on. This one's ready. I'm just putting a little drop on the bee itself, since these are such small pieces. It's a little easier to put the glue on the bee than the small little stripey bit. Okay. Okay, then I'm going to put some glue here. I'm just going to throw a couple drops here and there on this piece. And then I'm going to use my finger to help spread it around. So I've got the smallest amount of glue there. Okay, so the bee wings, you'll notice this has a bigger loop here, and this has got a smaller loop, and this little fun little crisscross area is closer to that. That is the bottom of the wing. So you want this little small area here to be on the bottom part of the bee's wing. And it's going to sit, this pointed area is going to sit between those first two stripes. So this pointed area sits right there, and then just line up your edges along here. And there we go. So if we look, and I think I painted the wrong side on this one too. Oh no, I didn't. I do have it right. So I'm going to put this on here so you can see it a little better. This is a smaller loop. This has got that bigger loop at the top there. So the smaller loop is at the bottom of the bee. Oh, that one is not working. So again, I'm just going to put a couple drops of this glue on a few spots here, and then I'm going to use my finger to smooth it out. Now if you're using a super glue, do not spread your super glue with your fingers. Only you do this method if you're using like a wood glue or all-purpose glue, Anita's glue. Do not do that with the super glue. With the super glue, you just need a couple drops in a couple areas. It doesn't need to be spread about. Again, we're making art that's going to sit on our wall. We don't need it to withstand hurricane winds. Okay, so then that's going to sit up there. I'm not going to glue it down quite yet, but just to kind of get an idea. Look how cute that is. Love it. Okay, and then the bee will be here. My U, and then our little clip will sit here. But before I do that, before I glue these pieces down, I'm going to actually glue the bee down next. I'm going to put him up in the corner. Okay. And then I'm going to take my liner brush. Now you can do this a couple different ways. What I'm going to create is the bee path, kind of that dashed line and some loop-de-loops kind of showing where he's flown. I'm going to use a liner brush and black paint. But if you're not comfortable doing that, you could use a black marker. You could use a black marker paint pen. You could use a Sharpie. Whatever you're comfortable using to create that bee path, use that. Now, if you're using a liner brush with just black paint, you want to make sure that your black paint is not tacky. So I did add a little bit of water to my liner brush. And then added those couple drops to my paint to loosen it up a little bit. You want to have paint, black paint, that's loose so that it, when you're doing your brush stroke, it doesn't catch and it won't give you a nice smooth line. So I'm going to start at his little bum here and just create small little dashes. And just take your time. When you're creating thin lines, you want to use a very light pressure. So with painting, you can create heavy or thick or thin lines with pretty much any brush. And by that I mean, like, if I were to press really hard with this, I'm going to get a thicker line. And that's about as thick as this little brush can go. But if I use a super light pressure, I can get a thin line. So know that the harder you press, the thicker your line is going to be. Okay, so I'm going to just bring this up. Maybe do one little loop here. And then he's going to come down. And then maybe another little loop down here. And then he's going to come back to the flower. So essentially he started at the flower, did a couple little loops, and he's off into the sky. Okay, so that is our bee path. Now we can glue down our BU. And again, you don't have to include this little clip with the words, with the little piece of paper if you don't want to. You could just kind of do this. And you could have, you can center your bee a little bit more, and maybe this is here and your bee takes center stage right there. Lots of different ways to do this project. So make it your own and do whatever speaks to you, whatever inspires you. I'm going to put a couple drops on my piece here. And I'm going to use my finger to smooth it out. And I kind of do the tapping motion like I do with the makeup sponge, which then kind of puts glue everywhere. I'm just going to put it right up the top there. And do the same with the U. Tapping that glue around. And that is going to sit. How far did I go? I went pretty far. There we go. Okay. So that's it for gluing all of our pieces. Before I glue my clip on here, I want to put my backer piece on just so I don't get that, so I have that down before I put my clip on. But before that, I am going to add some detail lines. So I'm going to use my liner brush with some black. And I'm going to just bring some lines in around my petals to bring in some details. If I'm using black, I call them detail lines. If I'm using white, they're more of a highlight. And you can also add just a few little dots here and there for some fun, whimsical elements. You could do dots, you could do more dashes, X's, and create a stitch line look. Okay. And then I'm going to clean my brush, and we're going to do some white. I'll bring a highlight into the top of my center of my flower, and then I'm going to add some detail or highlights to his little antennas here, little head. I'll also add a couple dots to the bottom, to the stripes. Wherever you want to add a little touch of whimsy to this project here. And then I'm going to add some dots to the B. And the U. Again, just for some touch of whimsy. I did a couple dots in the wings there, along the yellow stripes. And there we go. All right, let's flip this over. I'm going to blow dry it real quick just to make sure I don't catch some of those highlight lines when I flip it over. Alright, now we're going to flip it over and add our stand to the back. Alright, so the way that this stand works is this piece is going to be glued to our base. This is our attachment piece. These little guys go in these slots here. These are our brackets, so they're going to go in like that. And then this is our stand. The side pieces here go in those holes, so then it can move. Okay, so what I want you to do is kind of lay your stand so you're kind of just maybe a quarter of an inch up from the bottom. And then we kind of center it just to eyeball it, and then I'm just going to put that right there. Okay, and again, just eyeballing it. And you can grab a pencil and mark it if you want. It does not have to be exact, and if it's not exactly in the center, that's okay too. So I'm going to apply some glue to the back, and this is a piece that there is no real front and back. It's symmetrical either way, so you don't have to worry about if it's the true front and back like a letter you would. This can work either way. I'm just going to lay this on here just to verify that I do have a small little gap down here. I mean, it's about a pencil's width. You could use a pencil to kind of line it up. But I can see that it's going to sit kind of this line is about center in this bracket there. Okay. And then I'm going to drop some glue in those little holes. And I'm going to attach one. I'm going to put one of those little brackets in there, okay? And then I'm going to take this one and I'm going to put that bracket on this side because I've already got that one in there. And I'm going to gently push that little part of the frame in while pushing this bracket in the hole. There's a little bit of give. You can kind of see it does slide around there. So you do have, you know, you can push it all the way this way to get that second bracket in. And then just let it dry. And that's it. Let me lift it up so you can see how that works. So that's how it looks from the side. You've got that bracket that sits inside the base, and this is your stand. Okay, and the same on the other side. So you're going to lay your stand down so you have about a pencil's width here. If it gets to the end and you have less than that, that's okay too. What I've found is if it's touching the bottom here, you might not be able to lean it back as far, which is okay too, right? I mean, you just don't have the, this won't go as far back. But maybe you want it more so it sits like this, then you would have it be lower, if that makes sense. So with the way that I do it, it creates more of an angle for your picture. If you put the stand so it's flush with the bottom, your project will sit more upright. So that's going to be something that you kind of want to think about. And I should have mentioned that before I started. Okay? So leave a gap at the bottom if you want your frame to sit further back at an angle. Make it flush if you want your project to sit more upright. Okay? But that's it. That's how you put that together. And just make sure that's nice and tight. Since I'm not using super glue, wood glue takes a little bit longer and I don't want to mess that up. All right, so the last part of this project then is to put our clip on. And I'm going to use a glue gun for that. Okay, and give your clip a couple little squeezes just to help loosen it up. I've noticed that some of them, that little spring inside, if they haven't been used for a while, can get a little tough. So give it a couple squeezes before you glue it so it doesn't require a lot of strength to put your piece of paper in there. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold it kind of decide where I want it first. And I'm going to throw a good amount of glue right along that top little circle. And then I'm just going to press it down. And that's it. Now before you use your clip and put your piece of paper in there, you do want to let that glue sit. But I don't know if you can, let me see if I can show you on this one. That glue just has, you're not gonna be able to see that. Your glue gun has such thickness to it that it really holds that clip. It kind of goes through that little hole and creates a really good adhesion there. Okay? And then what you're going to do is you can kind of play around with your piece of paper and make it as big as you want. So I'm going to just take it and cut a section down. You can measure if you want and get precise with it, but I'm just going to go with it. And then I do want to cut a little bit off the bottom. But remember, some of that is going to sit inside your clip. And then there you go. And then you can write whatever you want on that. Be kind, be humble. That's kind of the theme. Be something. Make it your own. And I can't wait to see what you guys do with this project. I hope you have fun and find time to craft this month. Let me know if you have any questions. If you're catching this on the replay, if you have questions, put them in the comments, and I will keep my eye on this video. Let me just make sure I see everything. I'm not seeing any comments, so if you're watching right now and you're commenting, I will try and catch them after the video. But that is our monthly or our July Joy Box Be You project. Super cute. Super cute. Let's see if it's dry. Yeah. So then once that glue is set, again, it just kind of gets pushed out of that little hole and creates another little surface to hold your clip. But there you go. And you can swap that out. Again, you don't have to add it. Do whatever you want. I can't wait to see it. Make sure to post a picture in the group. And happy crafting, guys. We'll chat with you later. Bye.